Team Canada is back in the United States trying to solidify the relationship ahead of this fall's U.S. election. The Prime Minister spoke at a large union event and met with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. But today, Trudeau says it doesn't matter which candidate wins in November.
Given the integration of our economies, the complementarity of our economies, the real concerns around shifting geopolitics that are in some ways much more challenging than they were 4 years ago, it is to the benefit of Americans and Canadians to continue to work well together regardless of who's in the White House.
So is Canada prepared for a possible second Trump administration? The power panel is back on this. Michelle Cadario, Emily Nicolas, Françoise Boivin, and Kate Harrison. Emily, does it really not matter who's in the White House? I mean, he went there to talk about Canada and everybody asked him about Trump because it seems it does matter who's in the White House and how you have to navigate it. What do you make of this move by Trudeau today?
Yeah, both are true in the sense that I do think that in this situation, if you're Prime Minister of Canada, this is what Justin Trudeau has been saying is the right thing to say. That, you know, the Canada-U.S. relation is something that is age-old and that needs to continue regardless of who's in power, and that there are you know, interests for all to make this work. That is the thing that you say when you're Prime Minister. It doesn't mean that there's not a risk with the Donald Trump presidency, and that risk has been identified as one of the largest risks globally in terms of instability, economically, politically speaking, and that we need to be very, very careful with that, and that there could be implication for Canada given how very impulsive the man can be when it comes to deciding what his policies are, and how spiteful he can be, and also the kind of democratic instability that could result in him getting elected, regardless if he wins or loses. Just the distrust that he has in the election system is something that is contagious and has already been affecting the tone of debates we have here and the tone of trust in the media and in journalism we have here as well. And so we could get contaminated by that as well. And so Justin Trudeau is saying the right thing. It doesn't mean that people are also not right to be asking questions about Donald Trump, although they're asking it perhaps to the wrong guy.
So well, that's an interesting point. Kate, there's a lot of questions obviously about trade because of like what happened with NAFTA last time. And, you know, the argument at this point from the Canadians that the strength of that deal plus their trade skills and negotiation ability will protect them on this, even though it comes up for a review in 2026. Trump is already threatening a 10% tariff. You know, what do you make of the approach and the risk presented by a possible change in the White House?
Well, there's been protectionism with Donald Trump. There's been protectionism with Joe Biden. So I think Canadians have a constant in that we're going to be dealing with a protectionist administration. It's a varying degree to what level. I think when it comes to how to navigate a Trump presidency, what I observe the Liberals to be doing is trying to have it both ways. They go to D.C. on these junkets and other U.S. states and say they want to have a constructive working relationship with the Trump administration. At the same time, they are running ads on social media comparing Donald Trump to Pierre Poilievre. The Liberal Women's Caucus was out just today stoking fears about abortion, something Pierre Poilievre has said he is not keen to revisit in any way, and saying they have to do this, they have to raise this now because look what happened in the United States under Donald Trump. They referenced him by name while the Prime Minister is trying to make these inroads. So they can't have it both ways. They can't claim to want a productive working relationship with a potential Trump administration while also using him as the basis for an attack against Pierre Poilievre. I think that it just makes it that effort to try and have a constructive relationship with them, it really undermines that.
So Michelle, on that, I mean, you hear it less from the ministers, like when they're at the microphones and stuff, than we did, say, at the cabinet retreat back in Montreal in February. But you do see this MAGA link campaign on social media, as Kate points out. How do you walk that fine line, given the fact that I'm sure someone on the Trump team is seeing those things?
Well, I think you have to separate the issues from the actual relationship. And presumably, Mr. Trump is very proud of what he's done in terms of taking away the right for women to have an abortion across the United States and appointing 3 and 4 very right-wing benchers on the Supreme Court. I assume that he's very proud of that. He certainly talks about it all the time. And so I don't think that it's any kind of a hit on for us to point out that for 50 years, women in the United States actually thought that they were protected, that they had the right to abortion. You know, someone comes in and they change their policy and they take away access. And that's what we see, in New Brunswick, is that there's, limited access for people to have abortions, for women to have abortions, and that takes away some choices that women in New Brunswick have. So pointing that out, I don't think is in any way contradictory to realizing and saying we do have to have a constructive relationship. We have to be, our economies are so integrated. When he came in, the protectionist kind of policies that he brought in, the tariffs on softwood lumber, on steel, never mind the NAFTA, ripping that up and trying to start over again. It was very devastating for a lot of our industries. But the country, rallied together. The Prime Minister, to his credit, called upon people from all different partisan stripes, people from industry, to actually put that Team Canada forward. And I think that that's what they're doing right now.
So, Francoise, on that, Kate's right that there have been protectionist bumps with Joe Biden.
Totally.
I don't know if they're at the same level and magnitude of what we saw with Trump and what we might see with a Trump sequel, just because they're very different types of people in their approaches. I mean, how would you assess the stakes for Canada between the two options on the ballot in November?
I do think that we weren't ready for the first Trump mandate, and I don't think there's anything that will prepare anybody for a second Trump mandate if that happens, if that's what the American people choose next November. Because Trump made it clear, I think the problem will not necessarily be how the economy and how our exchange work with the states at that time. I think a future President Trump, if that is the case, has got such an agenda of political payback that he wants to put into force. He'll be so busy with that. Hopefully it'll keep him busy for 4 years. He'll continue ignoring Canada because I don't think he cared much about Justin Trudeau. And I'm not that sure that he would care much about Pierre Poilievre either. He just cares about himself. And like I said, he's got a lot of payback. Business will have to continue as usual. My colleague said so. I mean, we have such an economy that is, it's hundreds of billions of dollars. So I don't think that will change. The political aspect of it, the clownish aspect of it, might be for fun panels, not fun for the people and for the needs of the people. But you can't prepare, by the way, for a Donald Trump administration. There's no way in hell that you can prepare for that. It's an impossibility because you don't know which Donald Trump will be awake a certain day and what he will want to do at that specific time. So we continue to do what we can, and that's it. And meanwhile, Justin Trudeau might wish in a certain way that Donald Trump gets elected. So he doesn't want to hit him too hard for that to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, there are three things that you could do. Well, one is, you don't run attack ads against the guy that might be the president of the United States. The second thing, of course, is looking to diversify our trade allies and stand up more free trade agreements and make sure that we are actually trying to be a little less reliant on the U.S. I think there's 77% of our exports currently. Mm-hmm. And you could also, oh no, now I'm going to forget the third one, how embarrassing. But yeah, I mean, you can meet with Republicans. That was the third one, as opposed to just the Democrats, which in the first incidence of this, they had a good collaborative approach with other conservatives. It was a multi-partisan effort. That is not happening right now.
So I think Mary Ng is meeting with Governor Abbott of Texas tomorrow, but who is not a Democrat by any means. But Emily, I was going to raise the same point as Kate. We're not seeing meetings, or at least we're not hearing about meetings with there's Republicans and then there's Trump Republicans, right? Like Republicans are one thing, Trump Republicans are another. There's not, that I've seen, real visible evidence of that. I mean, who the Prime Minister spoke to today, it's a union that Kamala Harris was there. That's a Democratic space. I mean, what do you make of the deficiency there?
Yeah, I mean, there's always, in Canadian-U.S. relations, a really it's very important to have also relationship state to state. So actually provinces have a role to play there. And it's very much about state leadership as well, especially when it comes to trade and the economy and who's going to be invested what and where. And so it makes sense to be meeting with the governor of Texas. The thing is, though, is that, Republicans are not the same they were before 2016. And there's been quite a change of generation inside the party in terms of how many Republican are still left even at the state level that are not Trump Republican. And so the ability to talk, business without the partisan rah-rah, even at the state level, has changed in the United States in the last years. And I do want to end by mentioning that I understand that everybody's have a vested interest in having the economy function, but I do not agree that it would be state, business as usual regardless. Because the big thing that would change with the Donald Trump presidency is everything that has to do with green transition and regularization of the environment, and how much rules and laws and bylaws do industries, companies have to abide by for to be able to operate. And that would be a huge shift in North America in terms of whether or not we're serious about this energy transition. And it would send a signal in terms of best practices as well everywhere in the Americas. And so that's a very big one. And when you look at the last, that fall economic statement that hasn't been passed at the House of Commons, it was part of it was about, adapting to Joe Biden's plan for a green transition. All of that would need to be revisited here in Canada if you had a Trump presidency. And so that's not something to take lightly.
Okay, no, that's a good point. I got to correct myself. It's Greg Abbott, and I think Mary Ying's meeting with him on Thursday, not tomorrow. So if you're worried about Mary Ying's agenda. All right, I want to thank you all for joining me for the Power Panel. Michelle Cadario, Emily Nicolas, Françoise Boivin, and Kate Harrison. Thanks so much, gang.